So we're working in Mozambique before the cyclone. We've been doing it since 2017, where we had our coordination workshop. We followed that up with our Let's Fly training, teaching the National Disaster Management Agencies to fly drones. We did a combined mission in Mozambique and Madagascar. We went back to Mozambique a third time to teach people how to use the data from the flying missions and turn them into usable maps and usable data. And we did that in Mozambique, and we brought Madagascar this time to see if we could share the knowledge and learn some lessons from each other. We also had a deep machine learning workshop in June 2019. We were teaching students from the university how to use drone imagery and machine learning to come up with data. I've spoken a little bit about how the data looks when you can analyze it. We've also, the last mission we had was some fixed wing drone training, along with data collection for a floodplain which we expected to flood this year, so we could prepare our flood models and flood maps ahead of the emergency in this case. But let's jump straight into where the drones were first used. After the training, the first storm to hit Mozambique was Tropical Depression Desmond. In this case, the National Disaster Management Agency, they're called INGC, so if you hear me saying INGC later, that's who I'm talking about. They used the training we'd given them and their own drones, and they were able to go and collect data and create maps and see where the flooding occurred. Then the big storm hit, Tropical Cyclone Idai. Initially, we didn't know how bad it would be. We thought we were going to a city that's been damaged by a storm, but we started getting reports from outside that there was flooding absolutely everywhere. This was too big of an emergency for INGC to handle on their own, so they asked for the assistance of the WFP drones division, and we were happy to go in and provide some support. We weren't the only pilots on the ground. We also had pilots from the Portuguese military and some of our partners who were able to fly drones. For Idai, we had 15 multi-rotor drones in total and 1 fixed-wing drone. These are most of the pilots. Some of them were actually in the field that day. Now, the main activities we performed in Idai, WFP was performing the coordination of drones. That was basically taking requests from all the other all the other NGOs on the ground on what they needed to see, and allocating it to pilots and creating the maps and finding all the data. We did a number of search and rescue missions. We did search and rescue missions from out of vehicles where the road was blocked, so we had to fly beyond that to see if there were people that needed rescue. We also sent some boats up the river with drone pilots on so they could see significantly further. Many assessments. We did damage assessments of buildings, of structures. We did logistics assessments of the roads. One of the new things we developed at the time was line of sight assessments. Instead of sending a person on a rickety ladder up to a damaged roof to see if he could mount an antenna there and point to our central location, we'd put the drone in the same location and see if we've got line of sight. That worked fairly well. We created a lot of maps. I'll tell you about that later. And obviously, we collected a lot of footage from news agencies. Initially, the rain didn't let up for long enough to get an aircraft into the air. So the only eyes in the sky we had were the drones, and we could get the drone into the air if there was a 5-minute break in the weather. So we got a lot of footage that way. These are some of the stats. 16 drones in total, 150 flights, 1.3 terabytes of data, 60,000 images, and 2,800 minutes of flight. We mapped the entire of Beira city itself, which was 35 square kilometers. And outside of Beira, all the small villages we mapped was another 19 square kilometers. We served a number of different organizations. I've got the full list somewhere, but these are a few of the bigger ones. And then imagery. So what are we left with? We now have, between us and INGC, we've collected the highest resolution map that is in existence of Beira. We can produce an entire city-wide digital elevation model. Using our AI tools, we're able to count the total number of buildings, which is 60,000. We can measure the total roof area. In future, we'll be building up hazard maps. We can also classify the buildings automatically now. You know, what is the size of the building? We can break those down. What is the roof type? And is the roof damaged by the storm? I'll show you some of the before and after imagery. You can see how the storm actually took away some parts of the land. And then I'll move on to Kenneth's response. Now, Kenneth was a much stronger storm, but it focused in a much smaller area. In this case, it was just INGC and WFP. We had fewer drones for a smaller emergency. Similar number of tasks, similar things that we did. We didn't fly quite as much, 52 flights, 12,000 images, 150 gigs of data, more or less. Same number of organizations there. And we collected drone imagery in 9 areas outside of where the storm hit. To show you some of the before and after pictures we've captured, this is Ibo Island as Google Earth imagery. And that's what the drone saw when we went to map Ibo Island. This is Pangani Point. And again, what the drone saw in Pangani Point. Makubuchu Village. This is a cell tower. You can't quite see it in the Google Earth image. And there it is lying on the ground, along with all the uprooted trees. And the one I thought was the hardest hit was the Makubuchu coastline. It looks like a little city over there. And after the storm, there was only one building which was left standing. Lessons learned. This was quite a big one in terms of IDI. When we plan a drone mission, we pull up a Google Earth image and you stretch the map over the area you'd like it to cover. This works very well when you've got internet access. But when you don't have internet access, this is what you see. So it's impossible to see which way you need to go. There's 2 ways to work around it. The one is to walk the entire perimeter of the area, and you can drag the dots along the perimeter. When it's a small area, we actually did that. It worked quite well. But when you need to map a large area, you can't do that. So what we found is if we plan our map on Google Earth, we can create a shapefile and export this as a KML or a KMZ to the drone. And what's nice is you can import it onto the drone and you can see exactly the area you need to cover. So this was a lesson we learned very, very quickly. And since then, we don't only do this for mapping missions in an emergency, we do this all the time. It's just a really, really good way of defining areas you need to map. A few more things. You need to know what's needed when you're going to be doing your mapping. If you need to collect imagery at a 1 centimeter resolution, it's going to take you a long time. So if you only need 10 centimeter resolutions, you can fly a lot higher and a lot faster. You do need to always have a backup plan. We found this out when we started using the EBs for the first time. There were a couple of incidents, a couple of the modems burnt out when they got too hot. And we were very fortunate we had a few of our Phantom drones to fall back onto. So we had a backup plan in place. And building relationships, this was key. Before the cyclone hit in Beira, the National Disaster Management Agency knew all about WFP. They knew how we could work. They knew we were reliable. They knew they could trust us. And it was very easy for us to go in and start working together as a team. A number of other NGOs arrived on the ground. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know what their credentials were, if they had licenses or anything like that. So they just couldn't approve them for flying. So if you're working in an area and you're focusing on a number of different countries, it's very good to develop relationships with disaster management, civil aviation, Department of Defense. It smooths the ride, it gets you working a lot faster, and that means you get the data out a lot faster. The biggest benefit of having drone imagery is it's almost as good as being on site. So with a WFP helicopter costing about $3,000 an hour to keep in the air, very often you don't have the money to send everybody who wants to go and inspect an area. But if you send a drone pilot out and you can map an island, for instance, you can take that imagery back and the health cluster can go and see what the hospitals look like, and UNICEF can go and see what the schools look like. So you're basically bringing the field to the people instead of taking the people to the field. I think that's all. I've got a few links which you can see later, but that's it from me.
Thank you.